Transparency and programmatic, probably two terms that you don't hear all the time in the discussion about programmatic advertising, and it's going to be tackled next among the various points that you'd be interested in when you talk about programmatic in our next panel discussion. Could I welcome here on stage, please once again hold your applause until everybody's gathered, Meraj Qazi from Wall Street Journal, the Director of Digital Sales Asia Pacific. We're joined too by Allison, Head of Digital at ZenithOptimedia Australia, Henry Stokes, Director of Client Development at Xaxis Asia Pacific, and Eddy, Marketing Technology Leader at Kimberly-Clark. They're in conversation now with Luke Fenney from the Rubicon project. Give them a warm hand, please.
Thank you very much, Mark. So, over the last day, we've heard a number of the speakers touch on programmatic, and this panel today is really going to kind of dive into the latest trends and the growth that we're seeing here in the APAC region. At the event last year, we had on stage 3 of the leading trading desk heads talking about programmatic, but today we want to provide more of a holistic view, and as such we've got a publisher, a brand, an agency and a trading desk. So to kick things off, I'll start up this end. A really just quick introduction on your role, the company you work for, and a really just quickly summarise what's the biggest change in your organisation due to programmatic over the last 4 years?
Sure. My name is Meraj Qazi. I look after digital advertising sales for the Wall Street Journal. I'd say over the past 5 years, the biggest change has been education. Educating ourselves about programmatic, educating the market about our products, our pricing, our strategy, and really being at the front end of the education curve to make sure that we're all learning and growing together.
Yeah, Henry Stokes. I work for Xaxis, and just to confirm, we're not a trading desk. We're a media company, and we sell programmatic products. And the fact that I'm up here as a client development or business development person should indicate that that's what we try and do. You know, we're trying to offer great products to clients, not necessarily a trading desk service. Programmatic for us is the be-all and end-all. I mean, ultimately, we wouldn't exist without that, element of our business. So, it hasn't changed our business; it's enabled our business.
Okay. Hi, I'm Eddy from Kimberly-Clark. So my role is to look at help our brands embrace and use technology in how we market, covering APAC. And I can't speak for 4 years. Just from what I've heard, because I'm fairly new to Kimberly-Clark. But what the journey we've had is, obviously as a CPG, so we sell paper products, right? Not the most exciting stuff, but we recognize technology is now not just an enabler, but a differentiator, right? And specifically on trading desk, it's there are a lot of benefits around around a programmatic solution. We've had quite some successes in US and now Europe, and I think for us in APAC, it's now starting a journey of how do we leverage something like programmatic in how we do our marketing?
I'm Allison. I'm Head of Digital for ZenithOptimedia, based in Australia. And I think for us, programmatic has been, or RTB more specifically, so real-time bidding, has been absolutely transformative for the way that we understand media, the way that we view price, the way that we view value, the way that we view and value data. And it's given us a totally new ability to look at customers as a single entity, and a new way of thinking about customers as individuals, rather than focusing on the channels that we can use to reach those customers.
Okay, great. So the panel that we conducted last year, I guess, painted a somewhat lackluster picture on programmatic in the region. I guess more kind of demonstrated the infancy in the region. So I think some of the common themes last year were the tech is here, adoption by both buyers and sellers is slow, first-party data has not been taken advantage of, obviously the education piece is lacking. The economics of media in this region is completely out of whack with other markets as well. And I think it was Grace Lau from VBK that really kind of summed it up, saying that the region is really 5 to 10 years behind the US market. So I'm going to come to you first, Henry. The question really is, have we seen an acceleration in adoption of programmatic technologies over the last 12 months? Are we seeing particular clients or particular markets within the APAC region that are starting to make those, adopt those technologies?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pace of change has been incredible, and I'm actually quite surprised to hear that was the outcome of last year's panel, because I mean, we see things growing hugely in Asia, and the Xaxis business is a great example of how things have literally over doubled in size year on year. So certainly clients are embracing it. I think there's certain nuances about it in that it's being defined differently in each market. We see local markets taking a slightly different approach to how they're embracing this area. I wouldn't say we're 5 to 10 years behind anymore. I think that's an overassumption. So we're possibly 2 years behind. But as I see things going on in China, where they have created their entirely own programmatic ecosystem with local technologies and different ways of approaching data problems, imagery problems. It says to me that we're in good health. We're going to do things our way, but the future is very bright.
I'll add on to that. I think the challenge with APAC, what I'm finding anyway, it's a mosaic. Right? You've got a lot of countries. You've got China, which is a region on itself. I think some markets are more behind than others, but you've got some markets that are leading the way. Right? Australia is very mature, ripe for doing a lot of programmatic. Your China's, Korea's, there's a lot of dynamics happening there in terms of availability of publishers and or the publishers opening up. Right? So in that respect, you've got some markets where maybe 1-2 years behind. Others, they could possibly fall under the 5 to 10 years. So it's a range.
So I guess all of you kind of work for organisations that have a global footprint. I mean, Roz, you're based here in APAC in Australia, probably the most advanced market for programmatic. Is there kind of knowledge sharing going on between the markets at the moment? Are you talking to the guys up here in the APAC region or Southeast Asian region? And what kind of knowledge are you sharing?
So, I mean, Australia is certainly not behind any market in the world. There is nothing that is being done in the US or Europe that isn't being done in Australia now. We've got, third-party feeds from TV, so competitor TV schedules triggering ad spend through our demand-side platforms to boost spend. We've got other third-party feeds around things like a pollen index to trigger and boost bid strategies against specific campaigns and clients. So I'd say for Australia, there's nothing that is being done in any other market that's not being done in Australia. For ZenithOptimedia, we have the advantage of having a global network. It's incredibly important to have expertise from around the world, and we do rely pretty heavily on our global network to provide that level of expertise that we need.
I think when it comes to the countries that are emerging, the ones that need to catch up, where we could use a little bit of help is having a little bit more boots on the ground from the trading desks, so that when you have a country like Thailand or Vietnam that has plenty of impressions flowing through it that don't have the ability in a vehicle to use programmatic to reach the audiences that they're trying to reach, we need people on the ground to educate those markets and to give them a vehicle to spend those dollars.
Absolutely. I'm going to come back to you again, Meraj. So when we spoke earlier, you kind of mentioned one of the factors that may be, I guess, inhibiting growth of programmatic in the market is the metrics that the buyers are actually focused on. So focused on the clicks rather than kind of more kind of forward-looking metrics. So do you want to kind of talk to some of that?
Yeah, so I face a lot of questions about clicks. And I'm going to go ahead and say it. The focus on clicks is completely absurd. Somewhere along the line, we started talking about clicks, and that conversation kind of hasn't died out. But what I like to do when I get questions about clicks is I take a step back and I ask, how many ads have you clicked on in the past month? And 9 times out of 10, I get the answer that I'm looking for. You and I don't click on ads. Wall Street Journal audience, 47% of our Wall Street Journal Asia subscribers are top management. Why do we think that CEOs are sitting around clicking on ads? And so what we have to do is realize that publishers and brands are looking for the exact same thing, attention, right? We want the attention of our audiences to bring our messages across to the right and the strongest and the widest audiences. So let's focus on attention metrics like time spent. Let's focus on who are the people that we're reaching and measure our value of our buying and our advertising with attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think the obsession with clicks is a concern. And some markets are worse than others, I have to say. But it has knock-on effects in so many different ways in the business as well. I mean, if we have this click obsession, then we have a very need to drive for low-price media. That has knock-on effects for publishers who are nervous about getting into the programmatic space because they see as programmatic associated with cheap. It has knock-on effects with how we apply data to campaigns, because if you're buying super cheap, you don't want to apply 3 times the cost of your impression an add-on with data. So it's a real problem, and I think it encourages fraudulent behavior online. It encourages people just to source inventory from long-tail RTB ad exchanges. It's detrimental to the whole ecosystem, and I think we need to move to a different metric. Attention is one way of doing it. There are others, but that comes down to education and being a bit brave as well. Certainly challenging clients. I mean, it's very easy to say yes, and I think we should often say no. There is another way.
Roz, is the click still a big thing in Australia, or are we over it there?
Yeah, I think we've finished talking about clicks. It's people want a metric, people want a number. Ultimately, a click isn't a measure of anything. It's not a measure of any kind of brand benefit, acquisition. It's not anything interesting to talk about, I don't think.
I think it's easy, right? It's what people are familiar and comfortable with. But as we've heard, it's not the right way to look at it, right? So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit. Obviously, programmatic has been very disruptive to the way buyers and sellers are transacting media, and we've seen massive changes since how we were trading media for the last decade. So as a result, organisations have kind of scrambled to kind of set up their organisation in a way to kind of best service their clients. Here in Asia, we typically see kind of a hub and spoke approach with many of the trading desks and agencies kind of basing themselves here in Singapore or Hong Kong. So, Roz, in Australia, you guys are kind of making some big changes at Publicis Group at the moment and how those trading operations are actually going to be occurring moving forward.
Yeah, so we launched Audience on Demand in Australia 4 years ago. We were the first trading desk, because we are a trading desk, not a media company. We were the first trading desk to launch in Australia 4 years ago. And I think that was an incredibly important way for us to structure our business then, because it gave us a dedicated centre of excellence. We used global learnings from the other more established trading desks in the US and in Europe. I think 4 years in, though, we're seeing that the benefits of integrating those programmatic specialists back into the agency is now a very compelling proposition. Because we want our people to stop thinking about programmatic as being some kind of separate channel that you buy programmatic, or you're buying search, or you're buying something else, but rather think of programmatic as the means of transaction. So bringing the focus back on our customers, the way we want to talk to them, and using programmatic as the kind of means to get to them rather than a specific channel that we're kind of buying into. So we're keeping our product centre of excellence within the Audience on Demand group, but bringing that team of programmatic specialists into the agency so that we can all learn more about programmatic, so that our clients can learn more about it, and so that programmatic planning becomes client planning, or client planning becomes programmatic planning, and we don't view them as kind of separate channels.
So is the operational execution still within a hub or within the agency?
The execution is then within the agency.
Right,
it's
okay.
A team of programmatic specialists, but in the agency.
I mean, I think the overarching sort of vision of that is solid. I think it will be supported in markets that are big enough. But in a lot of cases, as we've seen with search marketing, you try and push those skills out into the agencies in local markets across a number of agencies within a group, as Group M has, and the economics are very difficult to balance. It sometimes doesn't stack up, and so this is why potentially there is these sort of shared service provisions, and then maybe pushed out when it gets to a certain size that we can justify. But clients also have to understand that stuff costs extra, right? And it costs a bit of money to have these skill sets and these experts in an agency, and if there is this constant attrition on price and on fee, we're going to struggle to have those skill sets within an agency.
So Eddy, I mean, you work with your marketing teams in various countries across Asia. From your perspective, what would the optimal structure for the agencies and the trading desk be for you?
I mean, for us, we know what we are good at and what we're not, and this is where we do rely on agencies a lot. And I think if you layer on into APAC, we've got some small markets with, and it comes down to how much budget do you have, right? They have smaller budgets, smaller teams, so this is where we can't look at having a dedicated team for them, right? So it's some sort of shared services model or some sort of centralized team or layer that probably makes more sense. And again, if you've got some large markets like China, Australia, who can afford and have a need for it, then that's where we may look at pushing it out.
And I guess from the publisher perspective, Wall Street Journal being a US-based publication, you have sales teams in various countries around APAC, and you also have sales reps who are kind of external companies representing you. Mm-hmm. How does a publisher need to kind of look at programmatic? We've obviously got traditional sales teams. Are you setting up an individual programmatic team? How do you structure that at Wall Street Journal?
Yeah, so right now within Asia, I would be the sales lead for programmatic for the Wall Street Journal. I really focus on educating all of our salespeople around the world to be experts on programmatic and to be able to have conversations with the agencies and with the brands themselves about how they're using programmatics as a part of their strategy. We've recently had the IAB come in and train all of our salespeople on digital media sales, and programmatic was a large part of that kind of conversation. So being smart, being educated in the market, being able to have that. If programmatic is becoming a bigger and bigger tool in the tool belt of our brands, then it needs to be a bigger and bigger tool in our own tool belts as well. And so we have experts kind of sitting in different centers around the world, and then we try to push that knowledge and that education to every salesperson in every conversation that they're having with every client.
And I think it's obviously great that we got WSJ on the panel, but I think it's more the local publishers that where there's a lot of work that needs to be done, because at Xaxis we've put people on the ground in 13 markets, 16 offices, and the reason why is we want to engage with local media providers and local data providers, and I think that's paid dividends in the fact that we've made a good product, but it's been hard work to really drive that agenda in each local market. And when you're engaging with an international operator like WSJ, it's great because there's global inventory available. But really, what I'm hearing that clients want, it's local inventory, local data.
Which is why agencies are well placed to have. We're already talking to publishers across multiple markets, but local publishers in each market. So it's more a matter of having a slightly different conversation and including that to being a programmatic execution of that conversation, rather than needing to treat the two conversations quite separately.
Cool, so we're almost out of time. Unbelievable, 20 minutes has gone quickly. I did quickly want to touch on data, first-party data. Eddy, I guess, coming from Kimberly-Clark, you don't sell Huggies on huggies.com.sg. You're going to have challenges around first-party data. How are you looking to use first-party data for your brands?
I think it's incremental, right? Data for us comes in. It's not, the components aren't different. We look at data and how we can drive, use that to drive the content that we serve. How we get to that data is different from market to market. We obviously don't sell directly. We go through our distributors. e-com partners, etc. Some markets, it's easier to get that data. Other markets, we just don't have it, so it's a lot of modeling, a lot of projecting, and just trying to make sense of that. But it's changing. Like Australia now, the big retailers, or the two big supermarkets are now opening up. One specifically is now opening up. I mean, they're smart about it. They recognize the value of data, and they're using that as providing it as a service. So it's gradual, right? But yeah, there's definitely value in how we can use that data. The US, for example, we do have a lot more access to that data, and this is where we can help our customers, for our customers, our distributors and our retailers, to increase their sales. Right? And that's what we're driving at.
Fantastic. I did want to have a few more questions on data, but I think we are out of time. So if there's any questions from the audience for any of the panelists, anyone? Everyone wants lunch. Yes.
Hi guys. So everyone said that clicks are not the measure of effectiveness or attention. How do you actually measure it then? What do you advise your clients, and how do you tell them to measure attention other than time spent on site and bounce rate, etc.? What's the effective measure?
I think it depends on client objectives. So, I would say that clicks is not really a measure for anyone. It depends if you're trying to make an acquisition on site, show some interest in different content on site, or and how we can follow that through using attribution modelling to determine the effectiveness of individual impacts or individual impressions or engagements with different customers.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing big use of GRP as a measure. I mean, obviously it doesn't necessarily associate with attention, but it's a consistent measure, enables clients to scale their business, to understand how it works alongside their television campaign. And I think, 50% of our business in Asia is video. So it's a really key thing to solve, to get some sort of trusted, scalable measurement metric for video. And that seems to be working well.
Cool. I think that's all we've got time for. I'd like to thank the panelists very much for joining us today. And over to you, Duma.
Thank you very much. Please give them a warm